Alright guys, welcome back to JBSR Plays It, and officially now the Madden podcast is basically what I'm calling this because it's become an NFL podcast. These episodes are going for like an hour each, so why would I call it anything else? Although, as I finally give in and call it that, this one's probably going to be a shorter episode, because I don't really have any drama attached to anything. So nothing really big has happened in the NFL world. A player from the Dwyer from the Cardinals got arrested and immediately put on the exemption list. So at least one of these teams is learning their lesson. It just says assault. I don't know any of the details. I don't know if there are any details. Aggravated assault.
Hello everyone, I'm Larry Ridley and this is the NFL on EA Sports.
So it's not domestic abuse, but it was still him hitting a woman. So, and I don't know if he hit a child too. I don't know, but Cardinals have learned from the other idiots in the NFL, like one of the teams I'm facing right now. So he will be out for a while, I think. So someone's, at least finally some of these teams are starting to take notice. But again, I don't think Dwyer is necessarily, I don't know the name. But I don't know if he's that big a deal. But the Carolina Panthers have also put Greg Hardy on the exemption list. Finally. Again, there's one of the, you want to talk about the Ray Rice situation, I think the Greg Hardy situation is the most mishandled one. Because he was found guilty of domestic abuse, and they didn't take any action whatsoever. Which I guess is good, because unlike Ray Rice, I don't believe that falls under double jeopardy. Because he never actually faced any sort of sentencing before, then they can still do it, but then again, I don't know if they just found that they weren't going to sentence him at all. So, that'll be somewhat interesting to see. I really don't care. I feel like, from what it sounds like, he actually beat his girlfriend or whatever worse than Ray Rice. Ray Rice was just a sucker punch, which, knocked her the hell out and, could have very well killed her with that. But it sounds like Greg Hardy beat the living shit out of this girl, so I feel like Greg Hardy's worse, and he got found guilty, and whatever. Let's move on to football. So, I'm 18 and 13 on the season picking, which mostly because of a strong week one, where I was 10 and 5. I would have been 11 and 5 if I remember to post the Seahawks pick somewhere, but I didn't, so I'm not going to be, I picked it right. No. That was an obvious pick. It was the Seahawks coming off a Super Bowl win at home. You pick the Seahawks every single week at home. So, going into this week's games, and we start off with what probably could have been a dud for the week one game. I know it's interdivision, but it still could have been a dud because no one was really expecting much from Atlanta, but they don't look like they're going to be a great team, but they look like if they snuck into the last wild card spot, it wouldn't surprise me. If they managed to sneak in at, say, 9-7 or 10-6, it wouldn't surprise me. But if they went like 6-10 or 7-9, they're in that range. They're not a 4-12 team again, but they're certainly not a 12-4 team either. Or maybe they are. Who knows? That defense doesn't look great. And then they're going out. They're the home team against Tampa Bay. Now, it's hard to imagine that Tampa Bay could go 0-3 to start the season. But, and again, they are only a couple of plays away from being 2-0. But, and I hit the wrong button. I wanted to hit triangle, and I kept hitting X. It's hard to think that they are going to go to 0-3, but they're going to go to 0-3. At least that's what I'm picking. Definitely taking Atlanta at home in this. Atlanta has looked better offensively. The Buccaneers Josh McCown has made some of the worst plays I've ever seen from any team ever. So tonight, I am definitely rolling with Atlanta. What are you reviewing? Whatever. Next up, we get the big 1 o'clock game, or at least what I think is the best of the 1 o'clock games. Whoops. Let me double check. Yeah, you got a bunch of bums playing. So yeah, the best of the 1 o'clock game, San Diego at Buffalo. You know I'm picking Buffalo in this. That's just how I'm going to go. But I'm not picking them just out of loyalty. I legitimately think they stand a strong chance at winning. Both teams are coming off pretty big wins. The Bills had a more dominant performance, but the Chargers had a better opponent. Have I ended up with Earl Bennett on my team in both of the franchises I'm doing right now? Whatever. But yeah, Buffalo is coming off a pretty kick-ass win. They're the home team, and you got to take into account the Seahawks are coming cross-country. The Bills were in Buffalo last week. They're not, they don't have to go anywhere. They never even left. San Diego is coming cross-country for a 1 o'clock game, coming off a huge win against the defending Super Bowl champs. I like the Bills in this one, regardless of whether or not they're my team and I pick them every week. I know they're up on the line, too, and I know a lot of people are taking the Chargers, and I think the Chargers are really good. I think the Chargers will be the best 1-2 team at the end of this week, because I think they're the best 1-1 team right now. So, they're a dangerous team, but I feel like the Bills are just so hyped up right now. I feel like it's not a 1 week hype. It's consistently good news, and it's consistently no one thinks they can get it done. And that's the old Bill Simmons adage, right? The nobody believes in us team. That is the Buffalo Bills through and through. And the problem is if they start off 3-0, people are going to start believing in them. So, if they don't win this game, then I can tell you right now they are probably going 5-11. If they do win this game, that momentum will kind of not necessarily carry. But it could definitely, it won't hurt. And this is one of their tougher opponents. Well, I can't really say one of their tougher opponents. They've got a pretty tough schedule. So if they can get at least one win against one of these tough, 2013 playoff teams, then their chances will look real good. So now we're coming off what could be the best game of the early games to what could be just the worst game of the week. No, wait. Yeah, this is probably the worst game of the week because this is two teams who everyone is already eliminated from playoff contention. I have two. You got the Dallas Cowboys at the St. Louis Rams. Now, we all know that Shane hates the Dallas Cowboys because he's a Bills fan, blah, blah, blah. But again, I am a Tony Romo defender. And maybe that's just coming from the Bills' perspective of not having a good quarterback since Doug Flutie. And even that was only for a year and a half. But Tony Romo is not a terrible quarterback, but he's not as good as, say, Peyton Manning or anything. So when you don't have a very good team around him, he can't carry the team. When you put a decent team around him is when they were making the playoffs. And he's got the one playoff victory, which is more than Andy Dalton, and everyone's riding him right now. But they're at St. Louis, who is terrible. A fluke victory over Tampa Bay last week. That should have been a Tampa Bay victory, if they don't have that runoff. Which, again, it's the rules. You can't argue with the rules that are put in place because people cheat. So I'm going with Dallas on this. This might be the only time you see me pick Dallas all season, but I can't pick the Rams knowing that they have an undrafted free agent. I think he's probably like a 2-year pro or something like that. That he's starting, and if not, it's Sean Hill, who was either the starter or the backup quarterback. I think all three quarterbacks played for him. For the 0-16 Detroit Lions. I cannot pick an 0-16 Lions quarterback in any way, shape, or form. I don't care what the matchup looks like. And Dallas is playing a little bit better than everyone thought they would, even with all the injuries, and even with Rolando McClain might not be playing because of a groin injury. So even with the injuries piling up, even with all this, I still like Dallas in this because I think that just goes to show how bad, again, I hit the wrong button, how bad this Rams team is. Next game up is Washington at Philadelphia. I'm easily taking Philly in this game, but it is going to be an intriguing matchup because can Philly actually win a game and lead it the whole time? Is that a possibility? What's Kirk Cousins going to look like as his first game as a starter this season? Not his first game in general as a starter, but just this season, his first game. He finished off well last week, but again, that was against the Jacksonville Jaguars. How's he going to look against the Philadelphia Eagles defense? I think he'll look okay. You know, maybe 220, 230 yards, touchdown, a pick, you know, maybe like 60% completion, somewhere around that range. I think he'll be okay, and it's only because he fits so well in that system that I think he will benefit from that. But I don't necessarily think he's a great NFL quarterback in this league. He might be better than some of the starters that are out there, and I'm looking at you, Josh McCown. You know, and he might be able, in the system, put up better numbers than, say, E.J. Manuel or Ryan Fitzpatrick. But again, those two are 2-0, and he has not started a game yet. So that remains to be seen. This is all speculation. That's all we're going to do, but this is the NFL podcast from a guy who is not an NFL insider, does not work for the NFL Network, does not really belong doing his own podcast, other than I just really like football. I don't even watch the games. Come on. If my opinions are wrong, that'll be my default defense. And if I'm right, I'll be like, see, you don't even need to watch the games. You can just tell it all from paper. I am not making my own case very well right now. I'm not doing that on the field against a terrible Vikings team without Adrian Peterson. Next up, we have the Houston Texans at the New York Giants. If anyone takes the Giants at this game, it better be because I don't know what the spread is. I think it's only 3 points. I don't see how you think the Texans only win by a field goal in this game. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to lose the Texans 3 to 4 games this year because that's what he does. He is a gunslinger, and he is the most inconsistent starting quarterback of all time. And he does it in stretches. He doesn't do it like one bad game, one good game. He doesn't do it that way. You know, that would be less infuriating. He'll do it for 6 games and then get a contract extension and then bomb the rest of the season, and all of a sudden they're releasing him in the offseason. That's what Ryan Fitzpatrick does. But I think he's got a better team around him than he did in Buffalo when he was doing that. They've got, you know, when he was in Buffalo, it's not that the Bills necessarily had bad players because you still had some of the, you know, you still had Leotis McKelvin, you still had Kyle Williams, you still had a couple of these guys, but you also had an offensive-minded coach and not very good defensive coordinators. You know, Perry Fewell did the best with what he had, and I think he was the best one we had, but after that, when they fired whichever coach it was, I lost track at this point. I think it wasn't Chan Gailey, it was the one before him, who I have now blocked out for obvious reasons. You know, he didn't get retained and no one gave him a head coaching gig because he was the defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. But Ryan Fitzpatrick did not have the team around him like he has in Houston right now. So he will probably do well. All right, I'm back. Sorry, diaper duty calls once again, which is a little more important than me doing a stupid little YouTube channel. So to finish up, yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick will do better than he ever did in Buffalo. So, you know, and they're in control of that division. And as for the Giants, a lot of people are talking about benching Eli Manning and this and that. Why would you bench Eli? What the hell? It's not his fault. They have... the drops are everywhere. They have no wide receivers. They have no offensive line. They have no running backs. And they have a no-name tight end who Eli Manning will just make a tight end. What is he supposed to do with that? At least with Peyton Manning, he could, like... Eli will never be Peyton, and I hate to bring up this comparison, but I'm comparing everyone to Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning made wide receivers better. Eli Manning does not do that. But he's also usually had a running game to run, whether it was Tiki Barber back in the day, or it was, what's his face, Brandon Jacobs before. You know, he's always had a running game, and they don't have that anymore. what is he supposed to do? He's always had a solid offensive line. He doesn't even have that anymore. He has nothing to help him out at all. So I don't know what people expect him to do. Yeah, bench him. Put in Ryan Nassib. See how well that goes. It'll probably go worse than with Eli. He'll have a couple of good games at first, because that's what happened with Tony Romo. Tony Romo lit the league on fire at first because no one had any film on this guy. Once they figure him out, then he'll be done. But I don't think he'll be good enough to win any games anyways. If they win, it was games they would have won with Eli. It's not a matter of Ryan Nassib's going to be better. No matter how good he looked in the preseason. So definitely taking Houston in this one. That's a freaking gimme. Next game, and I'm writing all these down so I actually remember my picks. Here we go. Minnesota Vikings, officially now without Adrian Peterson, seemingly for the season. Okay, why can't you stay where you were? Adrian Peterson, gone for the season, it seems like, barring any other, what else happens with his legal troubles. By legal troubles, I mean shit he brought upon himself. So the Vikings are at New Orleans, who has lost 2 straight games in the last 10 seconds of the game. They're going to be pissed. This is their home opener in the season. They've played 2 away games. They could easily be 2-0. They are now 0-2. They're going to be pissed off, and the Vikings have no way to keep up with them whatsoever. I don't see how this isn't a blowout. So definitely New Orleans in this one. I mean, you never know who could step up for the Vikings. You never count anyone out no matter who's out, but it's hard to imagine a Vikings team that looked good against the Rams and then played the Patriots without Adrian Peterson and got stomped, and I think the Saints are better than the Patriots in a lot of ways. It's hard to imagine the Vikings doing anything of interest in this game. So definitely New Orleans in this one. And the one thing to keep an eye on is whether or not Teddy Bridgewater comes in by the end of the first half or by the end of the game. Because if Castle, and I know you're forcing a lot, I know you're trying to do way too much, but 4 interceptions, that's not good. No matter how you slice it up, that is just not good. Although I'm curious, I don't know what the spread is. I wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota puts up 35 points in a loss because that's just how New Orleans has been playing on defense. Next up, we got the Tennessee Titans, who a lot of people thought was a dark horse pick after week 1, and now we're like, oh, right, it's the Titans. Taking on Cincinnati at home. Cincinnati all day in this game. Devon Still pick doesn't matter. Cincinnati is the better team. Tennessee isn't doing anything noteworthy. Jake Locker looked like Jake Locker last week. The Bengals looked really good. When you can take your best offensive player off and win, that's a good sign. They're like the anti-Vikings. They lose A.J. Green, and all of a sudden it's like, whatever. We'll use someone else. So that's a sign of a really strong team there. And this might be the year for them. I think they're winning the division. Fucking Earl Bennett. This is why you don't have a fucking team, you asshole. Sorry. Typical Madden player bullshit. But Cincinnati, this might be the year. Not only they win the division, they've done it, but they might go to the playoffs and win the division again because I don't think anyone holds a candle to them. But they might finally get their playoff win. They might not. They might even get a first-round bye, depending. Because the Colts. If you think the Colts are still winning that division, they're not looking very good. They're not getting a 1 or 2 seed. The Patriots are 1-1. Who knows what's going to happen with them all year because they're not the same old Patriots. This is more of a it feels more like a 10-6 Patriots team than a 13-3. And then what's going on with the Broncos, but as you'll see in a couple picks, and again, this is the Bengals control their own destiny. They play New England. They play Denver this year. So if they can win one or both of those games, then having just the number 2 seed. I'm not saying they're going to get the number 1 seed, but they have a chance at the 2 seed. Easily. they might be the favorite for the 2 seed. So I think Cincinnati's going to have a really good year, and I think this is going to bump them up 3-0 going into their bye week. Next we have Baltimore at Cleveland. I'm taking Cleveland, and this is entirely the Ray Rice pick. Cleveland looked good in a win last week, in a come-from-behind win, but I don't think that's going to be the trend with them. I think they're going to be feisty, but I don't think they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be the dark horse playoff team. Even in a weak AFC, I don't think that's what they're going to do. But what the fuck is wrong with me? I can't. The last couple of games I've been saying, it's like, oh yeah, me talking is doing better. Not today, apparently. Baltimore, whatever. They look good. They stomped the Steelers. The Browns aren't that good, but I just cannot, in good conscience, ever pick the Ravens again this season. I'm gonna root against them. I'm rooting for 6-10, and why not root for the Browns? I'm sick and tired of Johnny Manziel. He's got Tim Tebow written all over him. How are you going to call for him to start, after a win? And you can say Skip Bayless all you want. I find Skip Bayless highly entertaining, but very rarely do I ever agree with his opinions, but he's got very strong opinions. So I don't think he's an idiot. I don't think any of that stuff. I find him entertaining. I just don't ever agree with him. And I don't, do I think that the Cowboys should have taken him? I mean, I don't remember who the first round pick was, so I can't say yes definitively. But the way Romo looked last week, and this might be a lost season in Dallas, maybe Manziel, maybe this is the time to start thinking about him. So, maybe they should have taken him. I understand why the Browns took him, but I don't want to hear about Johnny Manziel. I just want to see Brian Hoyer go out and be Matt Castle all over again and just help a terrible team get to 7 wins. That would be cool. Moving on, Green Bay at Detroit, and this one is a little bit tougher, because I'm gonna keep knocking glasses all over the place. Very professional, clearly. This one's a little tougher to pick for me because Green Bay didn't look great last week against the Jets team that might not be that good. And Detroit didn't look that good last week against the Carolina team that might be really good. So Detroit got blown out. And Jim Caldwell has never struck me as the head coach to really get his team fired up and feisty, especially after a loss. It's more of they're going to consistently go out there and do a good job, and then sometimes they're just going to have a bad game. So I don't think they're going to come out with a fire or anything because they're at home. I don't think anything like that. But if any team has a bigger chip on their shoulder, it's going to be the Packers because they're the only team that people are less optimistic about after a win. So, except for, I guess no one's really up on the Redskins after they annihilate the Jaguars. But yeah, I'm going with Green Bay in this one because even if it's at Detroit, if Detroit wins this, I'm not going to be surprised. But it's going to be a close game. It might come down to the last second. I mean, I don't think either way the margin of victory is going to be greater than 3 points. Maybe 7, depending on, how the scoring goes. But I don't think it's going to be a huge blowout loss for either team. So, yeah, going with the Packers. Zero confidence in this pick. Was that complete? Was that incomplete? That was incomplete. God damn it. Thought he was extra second. Next, we got Indianapolis at Jacksonville. I picked Jacksonville last week. I'm never making that mistake again. The Jaguars looked okay at points. But that was in the first half against the Eagles, and they've been outscored 75-10 since then. So the Colts were trying to make a comeback victory against the Broncos. It didn't work out. And then against the Eagles, they just lost it at the last second. Because I think the fact that they have not as much talent as most other teams is starting to show. You know, they don't really have a reliable running back. They don't have any pass rush whatsoever now. They don't have a lot of things that you need to consistently win. I thought I turned injuries off. I guess not. Remind me to do that. So there is the Colts win here because I don't think they could easily be 2-0, but they could be 1-1. They should be 1-1 if some of the breaks go their way instead. There were, the BS calls, depending. I mean, they're not. I don't think they were clearly BS calls as people are trying to make it out to be. But the Colts go to 1-2 here, and I think their schedule actually is they hit a little bit of an easy break so they can start to build themselves back up over 500 over the next few weeks. But Jacksonville, it's at Jacksonville. It's the division game. It's not going to be a 20-point blowout necessarily. And I don't think we see Blake Bortles coming into play anytime soon, because why would you put him behind that offensive line? Next up to cap off the afternoon games, you got Oakland at New England in a game. So here's a bye week for New England. Now, I don't know what their schedule looks like for week 4. I should probably pull that up maybe. Unless they've got a game coming up. Who do they got next week? Who do they got? They're at Kansas City on Monday night. So it's not like they're looking forward next week at anything. So, if anything, they got an easier game next week. So this should be a good win for the Patriots. Maybe not as big a blowout as it was in Minnesota. God damn it, Vincent Jackson, you got in the way. Not as big a blowout as we've seen, but there's no reason for New England not to handle business at home here for any reason other than Tom Brady gets hurt and the inevitable, what's it called? The inevitable Gronk injury happens. So that's an easy pick. Now the afternoon games, there aren't that many. San Francisco at Arizona. I like Arizona in this game. And I might be the only one, but I really like Arizona in this game. It's at home. The 49ers don't look that good. They got the Ray McDonald thing hanging over their head. There's a lot going on for the 49ers that I don't like. And I mean, again, if the 49ers win this, it won't surprise me. They probably should be the favorite. Arizona is winning despite what's happening to them. They should not be winning. So yeah, definitely taking. I'm taking Arizona there. If that's the upset pick of the week, then let that be my upset pick of the week. I just think Arizona looks better despite being drained. Basically despite the fact that half of their team is on the IR. Next up, Denver at Seattle in the game of the freaking week, and who can blame them? Seattle is coming off that upset loss. Denver's up to 2-0 and holding off two teams trying to come back on them. Denver hasn't looked great in the second half of either of their first two games. They have definitely looked good in the first half. They've looked all as dominant as they were last year, and then just kind of have taken the rest of the game off since. And Seattle is going to be hungry for a win. And, of course, the important part is they're at home. There's no reason for Seattle to drop this game whatsoever. Even if this is one of the tougher games they have all year, they should win this one. It shouldn't even be close. So I'm definitely taking Seattle here because, and I think I heard it, I don't remember who said it, but I know I heard on one of the podcasts I was listening to that Denver's going to be pissed off that San Diego won last week because Seattle's not going to lose two straight. Next up, Kansas City at Miami. And I don't know that anyone cares about this game. Miami's 1-1. Kansas City is a very bad 0-2. I'm taking Miami here because they're, They got spanked by the Bills last week, but that was a high emotional win for the Bills. It's not like they lost to the Bills when the Bills were 0-5 and playing for nothing. The Bills were 1-0 coming off a huge upset with all new ownership. And Miami was coming off their own high after upsetting New England. So Miami's coming back home with a terrible Kansas City team. I think they take care of business. I think it's a Miami victory. And in the Sunday night game, we got Pittsburgh at Carolina. Carolina looked good last week. Cam Newton looked good. So I think this is very easily... Whoops, I got to force advance now. This is definitely a Carolina victory because Pittsburgh just came out, got spanked. I don't think they're going to come back because they're not looking like the team who I thought was going to win the division. They're looking like an 8-8 middle of the pack Pittsburgh team. And I don't know if anyone's starting this. Nobody talk about Mike Tomlin on the hot seat. He will never be on the hot seat. Bill Cowher went through way worse than this. Bill Cowher had 6-10 seasons, and he kept his job and ended up winning a Super Bowl in the end. So I think Carolina wins this at home to go to 3-0 and really try and take hold of this division. Especially because I think Atlanta and New Orleans win this week, so they got to try and keep ahead of the pack because they're going to drop a few eventually. But I don't think it's this week. And in the Monday night game, Chicago at the Jets, does anybody actually want to watch this game? Does anybody care about this game whatsoever? I'm going to say no. I know I could care less about it. You've got a Jets team that, same old Jets, they could easily be 2-0 without that timeout. I understand that. And if they were, they would definitely be the worst looking of the 2-0 teams. And you got Chicago coming in off a huge upset. And the problem is both of them looking like teams that could drop a game easily. I really don't know where to go with this one. But I think I'm going to go with Chicago. Because I think Chicago is overall a better team. And I think Jay Cutler should be able to put together another... He doesn't have to throw 4 touchdowns. He just has to not throw 4 picks. And they'll be okay. Geno Smith has looked good. But I think he's not going to be... set the world on fire just yet. I'm not saying he never will be. But right now, he is not going to be MVP caliber quarterback. But again, things can change by midseason. We might be talking about Geno Smith as a favorite. Who knows? And it could start with this game. But I really think that Chicago is going to go in and pull this one out. Sort of, they've got to offset. They lost at home. That's a big deal. Basically, the formula for success would be if you can go undefeated at home and over 500 on the road, then you're going to be 13-3, make the playoffs, and that's the simple formula. So if Chicago can offset that, they beat the 49ers. That's going to be huge. That could have playoff ramifications down the road. So they lose that game to the Bills, which may or may not have been a huge upset. We're not going to know anytime soon. We're not going to know until maybe midseason how real the Bills actually are. So they need to rebound off that. And I think doing it against the Jets, going to 2-1, going to 2-0 on the road, I think that's a step in the right direction, a step towards some good momentum. That division is wide open right now. Minnesota, they won the first week. If they go 1-15, I don't think anyone's going to be shocked because I don't know what people are expecting out of them now. Poor Cordarrelle Patterson. This is supposed to be Adrian Peterson. It's supposed to help get him open so he could break out this year, and he looked good in the first game, and now it's sort of like, you're their only weapon now. Good luck. Green Bay, who knows? Maybe they'll turn back into that dominant Super Bowl contender that we thought they would be. Maybe they'll just be the 9-7 middle of the pack team who could compete in a terrible division. So, and the Lions are going to be schizophrenic, just like they usually are. The Lions could go 11-5. The Lions could go 5-11. We do not know enough about any of these teams. And the same rule applies to Chicago, but I think this week they've got a chance. What is that? That's them and Green Bay could win. They'd be in first place in the division. And I don't know when they play next. When is the next time they play each other? Next week. Okay, cool. So having a huge... And they're playing at home. So if they can go with a win this week and go back home to Chicago, 2-1, Green Bay could either be 2-1 or 1-2, depending on how it goes. Again, it's at Detroit, so I wouldn't be surprised either way. I'm just picking Green Bay. You know, setting up a really important early season division game. Every division game is important, but I mean, really, you're talking about next week. If Chicago wins this, they take control of the division for the foreseeable future, especially if Green Bay wins. That basically gives them a game and a half advantage after the tiebreakers are applied. So that could be huge early season and carrying them in momentum. So I think it's an important game for Chicago. It's important for the Jets too, but I think Chicago kind of needs this because next up, after they have Green Bay, they go to Carolina. So that's going to be tough on them, especially if Carolina's as good as they look right now. So I think this is going to be a good week in the NFL. I'm hoping this is going to be a week without many off-the-field distractions. Again, we already had one, but the Cardinals took care of it right off the bat. It's like, oh, you got arrested for assault? Go on the exemption list. So hopefully more teams are doing that, and we're not having these long 25-minute discussions at the beginning of this thing about Adrian Peterson beating his kids and this and that and the other thing. So slightly shorter video this week. But again, this is where I wanted them to be. It's about a half hour, maybe 45 minutes if I had a lot to talk about. And I know I ranted a lot about Ryan Fitzpatrick in Chicago. Sometimes you got an idea and you just run with it. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to go ahead and upgrade my players, save it here. I will see you guys again either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not 100% sure what my schedule is going to look like. Pay attention to me. Go to JBSR on Facebook and like that. Go to, at Jellybean Sniper on Twitter. Go, to follow that. And any sort of updates, any sort of switches to the schedule, I will keep you guys in the know. But until then, thank you guys for watching. If you like this video and watched it all the way through to this, then please hit the like button. If you want to see more of my Madden videos, please subscribe to me. Every video, new videos, hopefully every Monday through Friday, depending on how my scheduling goes. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.